Hi, and welcome to this month's Sovereign AI Industry Advisor for May 2026. I thought I'd open up with a quote, a recent one from our AI Minister in Canada, Evan Solomon, and he said that sovereignty is not solitude. And that the geopolitical realignment that has happened has created a huge opportunity for countries like Canada, the middle countries. And I totally agree with that statement. The best practice that we see in a lot of countries pursuing a sovereign AI strategy is that they want to build alliances and collaborate. Even the US and China sometimes would be hard pressed to create a technology stack that is 100% sovereign. These are the stories we're going to cover around the world, and let's get started. So the first story, and we'll have another story here, is the government of Canada committing additional funding to create a compute platform in this country. And this one centers around BC. And in the end, by 2032, 150 megawatts. And for those of you who are seeing that term being thrown out a lot, megawatt typically is enough power to power a small town. I think the U.S. energy firm organization with nuclear power says about 400, 900 homes on average can be powered by 1 megawatt. So these data centers require lots of power. And what makes this one unique is that it's going to be powered 98% by renewable energy, which is great, and believe that will be a key differentiator for Canada going forward when they build these large data centers. The next story, some might argue, is already out of date. In a couple weeks ago, prompted from Anthropic's latest release of Mythos, where a lot of cybersecurity exposures are made really easy to exploit. The US administration said that they're going to introduce a new executive order to provide oversight regarding cybersecurity and on new models coming from the AI model vendors. A lot of information was leaked about where that was going, and in the end, it would appear that it's going to be stalled. We're wondering if anything's still going to come out there. My comment is that an administration that is better known for deregulating an environment, attempting to pivot to introduce regulations to make things safe, it is not an easy task. So we'll see what comes out of this. But at this time, nothing, which really isn't a surprise. The next story is DeepSeek version 4. And for those of you who've been following DeepSeek, thank goodness this didn't introduce a disruption to the stock market like its first release last year in January. However, this is a very disruptive release. It's the first release of a major model vendor that is going to be able to deploy it both on NVIDIA-based chips and Huawei-based chips. So to NVIDIA, it kind of breaks their proprietary dependency that model vendors are using it for. You don't need CUDA anymore. So most countries, I believe, are going to welcome this option, although Jensen Huang has gone on record saying this is, I think his words was disastrous for the US. But I think for most, it offers options. But another story that just came out recently regarding this is, outside the sovereignty issue, the U.S. lawmakers went after a couple firms, the most prominent one being Airbnb, and asked them to justify why they're using Chinese AI models. And his reply was basically they're less expensive. We're talking orders of magnitude less expensive, and disagrees with the proposed security risk and dangers that DeepSeek might represent. So we'll be watching those stories as those develop. I mentioned before that we had a couple stories about Canada investing more into the compute infrastructure as part of their compute strategy for sovereign AI. And the latest announcements, HIVE Buzz HPC is going to build a gigafactory for the Greater Toronto area. So 320 megawatts of power, again, lots of power, 3.5 commitment to capital. And for those who've worked with HIVE Buzz, as I have in the past, they were better known for providing GPU powers for crypto mining, and now they're making a pivot to provide those capabilities for building AI models. Mistral is one of the models of choice if you want perfect alignment to the EU AI Act and their requirements. And they've released a very capable model here. And it's something that you can implement on-prem with not much resources here and can scale. And speaking of Europe again, last time we talked about a possible merger between Cohere and Aleph Alpha out of Germany, and that went through. The companies are positioning this as a merger, although financially it looks like it's Cohere acquiring the German sovereign cloud provider. There'll be two headquarters, one in Canada, based out of Toronto, and the other one in Germany, based out of Berlin. And the latest model that they're introducing, Cohere Command A+, their first fully open source frontier model. And again, this is going to be available on-prem and supporting 48 languages, which is great for a lot of the nations there who want to build models that are aligned to their culture and their language. The UK announced recently a AI sovereignty fund, and one of the latest actions from that fund was to invest 2.1 billion into Isomorphic Labs. Now, some folks have wondered, okay, this is great to have an industrial strategy, to have a fund backing that up, and you picked a very prominent startup, Isomorphic Labs. Now, Isomorphic Labs is really a subsidiary of DeepMind, and DeepMind's headed by Dami Sabis, well known, based out of London. From a sovereignty perspective, this is many would argue this is a great move. It really kind of helps anchor this firm in the UK and lets the UK government have some say on this technology as it goes forward. But from a funding perspective, one would question, why would you need to invest 2.1 billion? There are no shortage of funds here, being a subsidiary of DeepMind. And then the last story introduced recently is a new Sovereign AI Index by this organization, the Center for New American Security, a bipartisan group that focuses on the geopolitical nature of AI. And it's an interesting website. I recommend you take a look through it. The research that we do is well aligned with that. And I would say that even though as recent as this announcement is, it's already out of date, just like the stories I told you about Canada and the funding of the expansion of their data center resources. That's not reflected. So the information they have is all based on public data. And a couple things I would highlight here is something we're also seeing is the top sovereign AI projects we're seeing. 59% of the ones that they gathered were all focused on infrastructure. Next on AI models, and surprisingly, a distant third is data, but still very important. So those are the stories this month, and we'll be updating you again in the near future. See you next month.